Hey there viewers, thank you for tuning in to Supermariodiagnostics once again. Today we are working on a 2007 Audi A3 with the 2-liter engine in it. Check engine light is on and it runs terribly. It came in with a P2296 fuel pressure regulator B control circuit high code. I'm going to go ahead and start it up for you guys. We got a long crank, flares up nicely, and it barely wants to stay alive. So we're gonna go ahead and dig into this real quick, right? We know the high pressure fuel system has a fuel regulation valve on it, so let's go ahead and access that and see what kind of testing we could do to definitively condemn any particular component. And on the passenger seat we can see a looks like an original engine computer, but just to note, I don't know if they were trying to repair this particular issue by replacing the ECM, but that just brings up another variable to keep in mind. What if the donor one is no good? But let's keep that in the back of our minds, do some digging and move forward. So we've got all data pulled up, and instead of guessing and throwing parts at the car, we're gonna go ahead and perform some testing. It should be a regular 2-wire valve, but you know, we do our homework, we're gonna make sure and see what we can expect. So I'd like to do the control find, control F, right? And then see if we can find reg U L. I see 3 options, and I'm just gonna look for the highlight. Awesome, so right here is our pressure regulator valve, 2-wire valve, red and green, pin 1, violet and brown, pin 2. I can already see pin 2, our violet and brown goes to our pin 19 on the engine computer. The 60 pin connector, when you see T60 or T94 or T whatever, that's the full number of the connector. So it looks like this is going to be the smaller connector, because I'm pretty sure this is 2 connectors and it has one big, one small. So, and yep, T94 on this one. So our other wire goes from red green all the way to fuse number 6. We could check fuse number 6, or we could just access the valve itself and see if it has power with the key on or running. That's our plan of attack. We're gonna make sure we have power on one side and a command on the other. The thing is, this is a circuit high fault, so I would imagine the fuse should be fine. That being said, let's go ahead and grab a little scope and put it on pin number 2. Right there, we could see if it's open circuited. Right, if we see no power there, we could see if it's open circuited or whatnot, just by doing one test. There's our fuel pressure regulator valve, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the key real quick, and got a little scope here that we can use. Make sure you guys can see all this, and I'm very simply gonna ground my scope against good battery ground. And I'm going to check my pin number 2, the brown and violet. And I do see some voltage on there, not the whole 12. That may be some kind of a test from the engine computer. So we may need to run the vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and run the vehicle. Make sure my time base is correct. We have a time base. We have the voltage scale is at 2 volts per division, and our time base is at 5 milliseconds per division. We want more than that. I like more than that. 1 second per division is not too bad. Hopefully that stays put right there for you guys. I already see something I do not like. We got ourselves here command from the ECM, but it does not go all the way down to ground. It is way up here. And this is just a solenoid. We've got command, but it's not going down to ground. So my question is this resistance below specification? Do we have voltage drop on the command wire? What's going on? Or is the ECM driver weak and unable to fully lock down that ground? I'm gonna turn off the vehicle because I hate the way it sounds. It sounds terrible. But unfortunately, our relay turns off or whatnot, or imagine it's a relay that goes to that fuse, and it comes down to 3 volts, which I think is some kind of a bias in the engine computer. Now, we know that the engine computer was replaced. I want to rule out any kind of harness issue. This is already all taken apart. The wipers were removed. And we got ourselves a used module. Looks like one of those places where people just buy them already pre-programmed because it has a VIN number on here. Got our zip ties removed. We're gonna go ahead and access the small connector. And I'm gonna look for our pin 15, the pin 15 I believe it was. Let me take another look real quick. Our pin 19 is the one that we want. So our pins 1 through 15 are on this side. 16, 17, a blank 18, and a brown and violet 19. I think what I want to do is really quickly just rule out a harness issue by running a redundant wire from here to here and see if anything changes. I've got my second wire here. We could scope it here too, doesn't really matter. But we're gonna run a redundant wire just to make sure there's no voltage drop on the ground command side of that circuit. All right, so we've got a redundant wire hooked up, and when I remove it, no change. No change. So I'm going to reconnect it. And no change. Let me make sure I'm actually hooked up. Right now my scope is hooked up to the ECM wire. I'm still getting the same command. So my connection is good. Now that we've ruled out the harness as actually being an issue, because nothing changed when I ran a redundant wire between the ECM and the regulation valve, we're gonna have to decide whether it's gonna be this fuel pump regulation valve or the ECM, right? Because if resistance was below specification in this, or if it required more current in order to operate this, it would elevate the ground command from the ECM. But if the ECM driver was weak, or if the ground supply to this ECM was no good, then we would see a very weak or elevated ground. So one thing we could do is give it another little ground on the casing of the ECM. I've had many cases, I kid you not, I've had many cases where that actually was the issue. So I'm gonna run this ground. We're gonna go ahead and start up the vehicle. You can see our very weak ground command. I'm giving it a redundant ground to the case. Not that this is the definitive test, but I have had cases where that actually was the problem. There was an internal ground open in there in ECMs, but this case, we've got a very weak command. I'm grabbing my power probe because I do want to try something that I haven't tried in a very long time. And it is the driver test. I want to see how it does here. And I am going to disconnect. Let me put this on the driver test mode first. And what this does is it matches the resistance that the ECM requires in order to function. So I'm going to disconnect this sensor, this valve, and hook this up instead. And I may need to restart the vehicle because now it's not doing anything at all. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so this time we got the power probe hooked up under the driver test. Right, this is something I've been wanting to try for a while. Haven't really had the chance to until now. We've got a full ground. We've got a full command from the engine computer. Now, this makes me think that the specification of this fuel pump is no good. I have the connector here disconnected from the fuel pump itself, and we have the power probe going right into the command side of that circuit. So this kind of tells me that the ECM is fine. It's very hard for me to decide whether this driver test is compensating for a voltage drop within the ground circuit of that driver, or if it's actually a weak ground internal to the ECM. So we did a thing. I went ahead and hooked up the old one that was on the passenger seat. I wanted to see if we got lucky. Maybe it showed anything useful for us. So figured why not? It's at our disposal. Given many of you may not have an extra ECM to test out, but you know what? If you have it, why not? Modules can be some of the toughest things to truly troubleshoot, especially when we don't have diagrams inside of them and we're trying to rule out some kind of a ground voltage drop issue. So let's go ahead and start up the vehicle and see if our ground improves upon command. We got the same kind of grounding going on. It still runs rough. It runs better, but it's not quite there. We can go ahead and confidently condemn this fuel pump. It may be requiring more current than necessary, than usual, to perform the same kind of job that a good one would. So I believe that's what's causing our elevated ground here. Of course, anybody may get lucky, replace that pump and call it a day, right? But we're testing here. That's what the customer's paying for. They're paying for us to test, not guess, not throw parts at it. Which is right, because they already put an engine computer for this. I don't know if it was for the same concern, but right now the old computer's running exactly the same way. Everything's exactly the same as the new one. So unfortunately, they may have replaced that for no good reason, but that's why they come to a shop and we can actually troubleshoot, pinpoint the issue, rather than to indiscriminately change parts. So we got the new part right here. We're gonna go ahead and swap it out and get right back with you guys. So let's go ahead and start this thing. I've got the new high pressure fuel pump installed. I'm gonna go ahead and do a couple of key-ons to make sure it's primed. Got a much faster start, which is a good sign for us. And we've got fully grounded command, which is always nice. It's running a little rough, but it's a whole lot better. I could hear something actually. This brake booster hose is broken, and you can see somebody's been in here before. We're using the original engine computer, not the new one, and it runs almost perfect. I'm holding this brake booster hose, but this thing's got a vacuum leak. I do want to see where my fuel pressure is, so we're going to go to pressure, whereas before it only actually gave me 6 bar. Oh, I gotta go back in for some reason. We got 50 bar. So before it only gave me 6 bar. we're gonna have to fix this as well. Obviously our mass airflow is disconnected because we've got our unit over here. So I think that about wraps it up. Thank you all for taking the time to watch this one. It's been a fun one, but I'm gonna turn this off, and that finishes the scope of this video, which is that code. I will do a key on and check for codes one more time for you guys. We're probably gonna have a mass airflow code. Okay, we got misfires because, well, it's running crazy lean. So we're gonna deal with that real quick and then move on from this one. This code is fixed. A little bit of testing goes a long way. We can see the importance of understanding the electrical design that they have on these things. You're gonna get a ground command, and if it looks like an elevated ground, there's a very good chance it's either the ECM or the valve itself is just pulling too much current. At least that's what it looks like to me in my mind. It elevates that ground because it's like, or it's got like insufficient resistance. So it's one of those two. I'm not a scientist, so I just try to fix cars. And I thank you all for joining me on that journey. So appreciate you all taking the time to watch. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.